The air in the woods was thick, suffocating, as though something unseen and malevolent was closing in on the group. A dense fog rolled across the ground, curling around tree trunks like wisps of a long-lost soul. The world was still, almost too still, as if nature itself dared not disturb the heavy silence that surrounded the Rift Manor. The mansion loomed in the distance, its dark silhouette barely visible through the haunting mist. For decades, it had stood abandoned, left to rot, its stories buried in whispers spoken only in the dead of night. The town's elders warned of its cursed history, of blood-stained secrets and forgotten rituals, but no one dared approach it. Until now, a small group of investigators stood before the decaying gates. Their car headlights cast long shadows on the wrought iron, which stood like skeletal fingers guarding the entrance. "This is a bad idea." Victoria's voice, shaky and uncertain, broke the silence. She was the troubled psychic. Her troubled past weighed heavily in her eyes, her power sensitive to the supernatural forces within the mansion. "It's not." Nathan, the leader, was stern, his skeptical nature the polar opposite of Victoria's. As a scientist, he needed proof, evidence. The stories of ghosts, spirits, and cursed mansions meant nothing unless they could be explained by rational science. But even his confidence wavered before the ominous sight. "I don't care what's inside," Emily, the historian, whispered. "I want answers. The truth is out there, buried in these walls." She was driven, perhaps too much so. Her obsession with the past overshadowed everything, her fascination with lost histories consuming her entirely. The mansion's decaying fog greeted them like the gaping maw of an ancient beast. The wooden door creaked open at their approach, and the faint sound of wind moaned through the cracks like a tortured soul. Inside, the air smelled of damp rot and dust. The walls, once regal and majestic, now looked like they were deteriorating by the day. In the hallway stood an ancient portrait, a family of four: mother, father, daughter, and a younger boy whose eyes seemed to follow their every movement. As they ventured deeper, their footsteps echoing in the silence, Nathan paused. Something doesn't feel right. His heart raced, but he dismissed the feeling. Out of the corner of his eye, a shadow flickered by. A chill ran through him, and he turned sharply, but no one was there. "You saw that too, right?" Emily asked, her voice strained, her fingers clutching her notebook so tightly her knuckles went white. Victoria frowned. "It's already started," she muttered under her breath. The mansion creaked, groaned, as though protesting their intrusion. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Shadows twisted along the walls like living things, taking the form of hideous face, grinning, sneering, and forever watching. In the distance, an old clock chimed, though there was no visible clock. Its sound was distorted, reverberating through the mansion's hollow structure. Suddenly, Emily screamed, pointing at a wall. On it, strange, cryptic symbols that hadn't been there moments ago began to appear, as if being etched by some invisible hand. It's a ritual. Something was performed here. "But this doesn't make any sense," our voice caught in her throat, as the air around them grew colder. The house seemed alive. The hallway that led them inward began to narrow, the walls closing in around them. Doors they had already passed now opened to reveal only dark voids, nothingness that felt like an endless abyss. Footsteps, phantom whispers, could be heard at the very edge of their hearing. Victoria fell to her knees, clutching her head in agony. "I can't hold it back. I see it. The woman in the photo. She's alive." Nathan rushed to her side. "Victoria, you need to stay calm." But she wasn't coming down. Her eyes were wide with terror as she choked out an incomprehensible cry. "It's still here. It's still in the house." As Victoria screamed, a door behind them slammed shut with a deafening crash, trapping them in the parlor. The room seemed to shrink further, the windows no longer offering an escape. "What is happening?" Nathan asked, panic creeping into his voice. He wasn't as certain anymore. Victoria's eyes fluttered open. "We're not alone. This is a place of dark rituals. Souls trapped here for eternity. The mansion. The spirits are bound to it." She shuddered. "It's all been leading to this. The one who made the deal. He's still alive, watching." Emily's hands trembled as she flipped through the journal she'd uncovered in the mansion's library. It contained writings that detailed unspeakable rituals, ancient ceremonies performed to summon and bargain with entities beyond human comprehension. But the words, they weren't just about summoning. "We were meant to come here. There's no escaping." The curse was passed down through every generation. These spirits, they bind themselves to the living. The one who remains is the one they owe their servitude to. Suddenly, the apparition of the man in the photograph, same face, whose eyes followed them everywhere he appeared before them. His eyes now glowing, dark, like burning embers in the night. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered, and the voice was not his but a chorus of the damned. The temperature plummeted. Fog rolled into the room, filling it with a dense, suffocating cloud. A door behind them slammed open with force, only to reveal an empty hallway stretching endlessly into the unknown. But this time, the voice was louder, more insistent. "You will join us." The air vibrated with an unseen power, the walls closing around them like the jaws of some monstrous beast. As they turned to flee, the mansion warped, hallways twisted like serpents, leading them in circles, while shadows became corporeal forms, gnashing teeth, spectral hands, cold as death, reaching for their very souls. Victoria collapsed. "We're inside it now. It has us." As the others turned to see her collapse, a shadowy figuretto, odd, cloaked, emerged from the fog, casting a chilling presence that permeated every inch of the room. The creature's voice, though low and hollow, made Nathan's blood run cold. "The curse is endless. You are merely its next phase." But just as they thought the final blow was coming, as the figure lunged forward, the door swung open one last time, revealing the black void of night, and the terrifyingly unassuming figure of the mansion now standing silent. The fog, the shadows, the eerie silence remained, and just as they began to step back toward the light, the final twist of the curse dawned. "You never left."